Welcome into the postgame. Rockets rack up another win, 129 to 101 in Utah. I'm here with Ben DuBose. Ben, it's good to be back. It feels like an eternity since we've done this again. We did skip the Warriors game, which was a really great, thrilling win, a Reed Sheppard breakout. But for this one, Rockets just crushed the Jazz from pretty early on. And it's just an embarrassment of riches for the Rockets watching this game. Just like there's just a wide array of ways that this team can beat you, and they just overwhelmed the Jazz today.
Well, and one thing in the macro that I think has been overlooked about the Rockets' start to the season, going into today, they had the fourth toughest strength of schedule in the entire NBA. The rest of the way, according to Tankathon, dead last, number 30. So whatever concerns you had about this team, they've been playing a tougher schedule than what they're going to have over the final 66 games. Now, I believe 65 because you're 13 and 4 after today. So the Jazz are a bad team. They're 6 and 13 for a reason. Yet you're going to be playing some weaker teams coming up. Now, you haven't had any back-to-backs yet. This is your first, so we'll see how the Rockets fare tomorrow, although thankfully there's no travel in between, and it's a back-to-back for the Jazz as well. And this week overall, you've got 5 games in 7 days, but largely against weaker opponents. You've got the Jazz twice, you've got the Kings, you've got the Mavs. So this is a part of the schedule that you can fatten up on. And I think that's what's gotten forgotten about this team for as good as this start has been. And I think they're right on schedule with even the most optimistic of expectations going in. I know you've got your spreadsheet. At the same time, look, I don't know if there's any huge takeaways from this game against a bad Jazz team other than as good as Houston has looked overall, whatever nitpicks you might have about the overall season, like I had mentioned last week, Kevin Durant had struggled to shoot in those last 2 games that he played before missing 2 games for personal reasons. The previous two were against the Cavs and the Nuggets, and I think he was about 33% in those 2 games. Well, today he led the way, 25 points on above 70% shooting, had 4 assists, 3 steals, 6 boards, and looked dominant, only had to play 3 quarters. So if you had any concerns about KD, because going in, the numbers had dipped a tiny bit. Overall, he was like 48.5%, about 36.5% from three, 61% true shooting. Well, all of those are going up a decent bit after today. And I think,
Yeah.
it's true for KD. He's going to face some weaker defenses and he should feast. But I think it's true for the team as well. As good as they've looked, they haven't had too many easy games. Tonight and tomorrow, these are easier games. And so far, so good. The Rockets came out and took care of business in the front end.
Yeah, absolutely excellent game for KD in his return, 10 to 14 shooting. Reed Sheppard stays in the starting lineup. And it's funny, Reed didn't have this game where he shot, 10, 12 threes. I think he was 1 of 3 from 3 point range, but still 4 of 8 from the field. Had 4 steals, a couple of blocks, was very, very pesky on defense. I thought he did a really good job there. And this is the kind of perfect runway right now, as you just outlined, the games that are coming up for him to be in this starting lineup. I think we've talked about it before. We saw it at the very beginning in the preseason. What they wanted was for Reed to start, and then it was just kind of early on, like, okay, he's not ready. He has made such a leap. I mean, I'm still obviously holding my breath a little bit, like, is
Mm-hmm.
this really going to continue? But he's made such a leap in his comfort level that he looks like he's fitting right in. Again, these are matchups that we're ramping up to the bigger names. But he's just been terrific. So plus 33 today. What's really ridiculous, Ben, is you look at the raw total plus minus on the year, and Reed Shepherd's like up there with
Mm.
Şengün. I think he's past Şengün now. And this is in like 200 plus minutes difference. Like he has put up some insane plus minus totals. Reed Sheppard, he's in the top 4 or 5 on the team. I think you got Amen, Jabari, KD, Reed, and Şengün. And he's the guy who hasn't played the minutes like those guys.
Yeah. I wrote a blog on Clutch Fans that went live on Thanksgiving looking at some of the advanced metrics and how favorably Reed grades out. Right now, or at least going into today, I haven't seen the post game update, but box plus minus, the entire league, Reed was fifth. The only guys ahead, Jokic, SGA, Giannis, and Luca. Now, it's one metric, and am I saying Reed's the fifth best player in the world? Of course not. By the way, the best American according to that metric. But I do think it speaks to the overall impact that he makes when he plays. The Rockets are better when he's on the floor. And in
Yeah.
some ways, I felt really, I don't want to say better because 31-9, what he had the career night in San Francisco against the Warriors to get that win. Obviously, that's really impressive. But I think we all knew that Reed was capable of popping off, that he had that in his bag offensively. The big question was how he could play in a complementary role. Because if you want to start him
Mhm.
and both KD and Şengün have it going on the way they did tonight, there's only going to be so many touches, so many shot attempts to go around. So is he going to provide value in other areas as a ball handler, as a facilitator, as a defender? Now, I know this is a bad team, but I mean, to the point we raised earlier, the Rockets are going to be playing some bad teams coming up. You can only play who's on your schedule. And for him to have 6 combined steals and blocks, tied his career high with 4 steals, um, shot 50% overall, was in control of the offense. He didn't shoot a lot, and yet it felt like his fingerprints were all over this game because
Mhm.
he was very steady offensively, made the right reads, the right passes. Defensively, the Jazz aren't exactly a type of team to punish his lack of size the way some bigger opponents might try to. But I mean, whatever weaknesses there were, he offset that and then some with the steals and the blocks and the turnovers that he was able to force and lead to easy buckets for the Rockets. And so with Reed, we all knew the potential. For me, it's more about the floor. What's going to happen if it's not a game that he's able to really do a ton offensively, at least in terms of scoring? And in some ways, I felt even better coming out of this one that in a game where he wasn't super high usage, he still had a good impact. You mentioned the plus 33, which is astounding, and it led the way. And I think just the way the schedule sets up. So he started the last 3 games in a row. Now, the 2 prior to KD's return were largely injury based, but now he started tonight, even with Josh Okogie and Steven Adams available. And so to me, that speaks volumes. Like Ime Udoka is buying in that this is something sustainable because if they win again tomorrow, and I don't see Ime Udoka changing the lineup between games when you're playing the same opponent and you looked as good as the Rockets did today. So you will have 4 straight games of Reed starting, all wins on the assumption they win tomorrow, that is. They will have, at that point, won 14 of 16 games because they've won 13 of 15 now since that 0-2 start. So you're coming out of these 2 games in Utah. If you handle business tomorrow, Reed will have started 4 straight games. Potentially, you've won them all. You're rolling as a team. Reed is playing well individually. The schedule, at least for the remainder of this week and next week as well, isn't that difficult on paper. Why would you change? And so for me, like I'm not saying it's a permanent change. They do have a long road trip second half of December. Like it's not always going to be easy, but if they win again tomorrow and Reed looks solid, to me this feels like Ime may roll with this for quite a while. Like I don't see what
Mhm.
would tip them back for the time being.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. It's funny. I talked about it at the very top of the show, just this kind of embarrassment of riches. Şengün tonight, 10 of 15, really efficient, scored quite a bit. Yet the Rockets made their runs when he was sitting for most of the game. It was really kind of crazy. Just kind of shows you how potent this roster is right now. Steven Adams comes
Mm.
in and just had a major impact in this game. There was a play, and I'm sure everybody who watched the game knows what I'm talking about right
Oh
now,
yeah.
where he had this highlight reel block, runs the floor. KD finds him under the basket. He turns and just throws down this nasty jam that looks like Steven Adams from 8-10 years ago. He just has spring in his step. He had 12 boards tonight, 4 offensive, and I think he played just under 17 minutes. Was a plus 24. This is a starting level center on just about any team in the league. He is sacrificing, in my opinion, quite a bit to be here. I mean, to play this role. Obviously, it's good for him with the knee and everything to not have so much on him, but he is a major impact guy that I think probably does not get enough credit in the sense of he's 2 for 4 from the box in the box score. Nobody really notices what he does offensively in that nature, but he has such tremendous force for the Rockets in getting these wins.
Well, and also shout out to the Stay Ready crew, guys like Clint Capella, JD Davis, and Jayshawn Tate, because Steven was super fresh going into this game because he didn't play on Wednesday at Golden State. He had been listed as questionable for a few days. I think he was technically questionable going in today as well with that ankle injury. But because he didn't play Wednesday and there was this break in the schedule, he hadn't played in almost a week. It was from last Monday in Phoenix was the last time that Steven played. And so he looked super fresh. For KD, it was more than a week. It was since the previous Friday. That was when he last played. So Kevin had more than a week. Steven had almost a week. And so guys of, I don't want to say old, but let's say advanced age,
Yeah, sure.
guys that are well into their second decade, KD's almost in his third decade in the NBA, that rest over a season, any opportunity you have to get them more fresh is really beneficial, especially against a younger team where they can just use their savvy and basically take over a game at a moment's notice. One thing I really liked about what the Rockets showed us tonight, I've talked before about the importance of, being able to put teams away in the third quarter. And that's what great teams do so that you can use the fourth quarter to sort of let your big guns rest. KD didn't play at all in the fourth quarter. I don't think Steven did as well. And there was a little bit midway through the game where the Rockets were up by, I think, as much as 24 in the first half. The Jazz had cut it to 13 early in the third quarter. We talked, me and you, that it looked like the Rockets were sort of sleepwalking a little bit. They weren't crashing the glass as much offensively. Defensively looked a little bit lethargic. And bam, next thing you know, 19-2 run, and they're up 30, and the game is clearly over. And that's when you have guys that are as accomplished as Kevin Durant and Steven Adams playing against a very young team like the Utah Jazz. It doesn't take much to flip a game, and that's what we saw in the third quarter. Well, not flip, but put a game away that had been sort of trending Utah in terms of the momentum, and then it flipped back hard in the direction of the Rockets, and they were able to cruise to a victory, not even having to play KD and Steven in the fourth quarter. So yeah, shout out to Steven. He was tremendous, but also that Stay Ready crew deserves a ton of credit because obviously, despite missing 5 rotation players, they got a big win at Golden State the other night on a night when the Warriors had Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond all playing. But beyond just getting that win, being able to get guys like KD and Steven a few days extra rest, whenever you can be creative in the schedule. And this may come up again in December because with the NBA Cup, they're going to have these breaks where I think they go from like between the 6th and the 18th, they play just 2 games. So if you can sort of combine off days with, maybe a maintenance game and give guys a week break, especially that have been, that have the mileage that guys like Kevin and Steven do, then that can really pay dividends in the grand scheme. And so I thought the Rockets managed the situation well over the last week, and I thought they reaped the rewards today.
Yeah, I listened to Ime Udoka in post game. He had a couple of things. One, he talked about their sort of game plan to take out Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George. Keontae George has thrived. Now, I didn't know this, but they talked about on the broadcast that apparently Keontae George had an illness, was playing through that aspect. But when I say they shut somebody down who has been thriving, they shut this guy down. 0 for 6 from the field, finished with 8 turnovers. I didn't even notice this till I'm looking right now. 0 points in 19 minutes. I mean, I don't want to say it's single-handedly a men, but you got to obviously point
a
at
lot
a
of it.
men. Yeah, exactly.
And Jabari's looked a lot better defensively as well. Like,
oh man,
really the collective defensive effort. The last 3 games, they're holding teams to below 100 points on average, and the defensive rating going into today had surged to 6th overall. I think there's a decent chance it'll be top 5 after today. The fourth quarter didn't help them, but overall, it should still move positively. And, there's lots of guys across the board that we can credit, but I thought Jabari specifically, the last few weeks, he's looked a lot more fluid defensively and how he moves in the perimeter. And there were several possessions today. We often talk about the work he did on his body showing up offensively with his ability to put the ball on the floor. He looks a little bit more athletic when he attacks closeouts and goes to the rim. But defensively, it feels like relative to even last year, you see him holding up much better on switches. He's moving his feet on the perimeter. And I know Ime gave some love to Jabari post game, and I think largely he was talking about on offense, but I think defensively as well, Jabari's a big piece of, if you switch a man off and you get Jabari on, that advantage is not what it has been in previous years.
Yeah, it's interesting. I posted the clip. I can't remember who it was for the Jazz that had the ball, but Jabari through multiple sets sort of was fighting through screens, around screens, defending a guy, forced a deflection, and then went the other way and finished. And that, that's kind of what Ime talked about. It's funny because you and I talked before the game. We talked a little bit about what they're going to be missing with Reed starting, because obviously Okogie does bring some of that Dylan Brooks physical defense. And I was thinking, well, I've always been a huge Jabari guy. I love Jabari. I don't think Jabari is this physical defender like an Okogie or Dylan Brooks, but you can see how much he has improved in that area, and I think that was on display there. And Ime really kind of raved about him. A shout out to Vanessa for the question, but just talked about how he's had growth in every single area, putting the ball on the floor, shooting both sides of the floor. His physicality is comfortable, more comfortable with his body. Yeah, he looks terrific. I mean, he's not getting the credit because it's KD, Şengün, Amen sort of overshadowing that. But I mean, like I said, the guy is second in the league, or excuse me, second on the team in I think net rating behind Amen. Uh, he's been a big reason why the Rockets have been successful this season.
I mean, he's averaging about 15 points per game, shooting 40% from three, the perfect glue guy playing elite defense, or at least very good defense. I'm sure some will try and quibble over the word elite. I was stunned at the Ringer's top 100 list last week that had Tari
Mm-hmm.
Eason at 75 and Jabari in the top 100. I don't see how you can watch this team and not come to the conclusion that Jabari is clearly the fourth most valuable player. I don't think it's even debatable, other than on some nights, Steven Adams. But with Steven, there's a little bit of a maintenance consideration that probably caps him a little bit below Jabari when you look at the totality of 82 games. But I would say Jabari at worst tied with Steven for the fourth most impactful player on this team. I think that's pretty undeniable. Now, Reed Sheppard the last few weeks, can certainly make an argument, but we need a little bit of a longer sample with Reed before I think we truly buy into that extent. And if he does, if Reed is actually truly like a top three or top four guy on this team this season, then you're really cooking with gas. At that point, if Reed is that level of a player alongside KD, Şengün, Amin, Jabari, and Steven, then those are wonderful concerns to have. So yeah, Jabari's sort of flown under the radar because he's never the headliner. He's very steady, but he's improved the threes from about 35% the last 2 years to 40% this year. Defensively, he looks more fluid. That shows up offensively when he's attacking the closeouts. I mean, he's just a perfect role player. And that's before we even go into, there were no high leverage possessions tonight, but we've talked about it before. How many big threes has he hit late in games that were sort of teetering that could go either way that have
Yeah.
brought the Rockets back into it? Like, to me, he's just the quintessential glue guy for a contender. That's what Jabari Smith Jr. is. And, I don't necessarily think we saw it today because the Rockets won with ease, but we just saw, as Ime said, just a much better player overall. And to some extent, that's to be expected. Like, what people forget about Jabari, he's just 22 years old. It's year 4, but he's still one of the youngest guys on this entire team in terms of raw age because of how young he was coming out of Auburn, entering that 22 draft class. So for him to do what he's doing on a winning team at 22 is just phenomenal. And the contract that Rafael Stone and the Rockets got him on for 5 years after this one, I mean, I think if you're in the business of buying Rockets jerseys, Jabari Smith might be one of the safest ones to buy because between
Yeah.
his value to the team in so many different constructs, he's not high usage. Between the friendly terms of the contract, Dave, I got a feeling he's going to be in Houston for a long time.
Yeah, as someone once said, if we ever traded Jabari, we would be looking for somebody like Jabari, right? I mean, like he is his height, his ability to shoot, his ability to defend. It's more rare than I think people
Yeah.
realize. And he's comfortable playing complementary role. I'm ecstatic with how he's developing now. I thought it was a little bit slow first, for a couple of years, but I think Jabari has become an extremely important player for this team. Man, we talked about the defense, and it was, as always, really good. Tonight, just 2 of 8 from the field. Missed some shots that you're like,
Yeah.
as he tends to do at times where you're like, man, that was a $1 billion move, and then just, a $10 finish kind of thing. It really just didn't quite pan out. But 9 assists tonight, was kind of, very comfortable on ball, 8 boards, does all, he always brings the defense. I'm just ecstatic. And I think when talking about like how different this team is, I mean, you just look at it. Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith, Alperen Şengün, Amen Thompson, Reed Sheppard. That is really, there's not a whole lot of overlap there. I
No.
mean, they can score in a variety of ways. If you double one, another one can really burn you. It's, again, tip my hat to Rafael Stone for building this because you've got guys. Tari's not even here yet. Tari Adams coming off the bench, DFS eventually. You got a Kogi who's contributing. This is a really good team, and it's starting to shape up to be kind of similar to 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was, to where, OKC is our Golden State now, and we've got to
Yeah.
figure out how we can compete with this team. But the Rockets are in a tier below, but they are really good. And now it's a matter of what adjustments can you make to knock off OKC.
Well, and I think Reed and Amin long term have a ton of potential starting next to one another because I think those are two
Mm.
very complementary players. It often gets talked about in terms of ball handling because people are nervous. There's been the whole question of is Amin a full blown point guard? I don't know what the answer is to that, but he at least has some point guard abilities, which allows you to run Reed Sheppard off the ball a little bit, which can be really valuable. Obviously, there's value to him as a floor spacer, but also just the movement. Like Reed works very hard off the ball, and so he brings some gravity there that you can tap into when you let Amin handle the ball. And conversely, if it's a matchup where you need a little bit more ball handling and you want Amin to play out of that dunker slot, then you can let Reed initiate the offense. So you can sort of let them go back and forth. The big question with Amin is the shooting. Well, Reed's got the shooting in spades. And with Reed, the big question is defense. Well, Amin's got the defense in spades. So I think those two, as long as they can figure out how to be comfortable in the touches they get, with Reed, it's still going to be determined. He can't be as high usage, at least not consistently in the starting lineup to the extent that he was when he was in that six-man role. But so far, so good. He looked really promising today, I thought. The plus 33 doesn't lie. And then, yeah, in the big picture, like Reed and Amin have a lot of complementary skills. I think they can mitigate the weakness of the other, or at least the perceived weakness. And so, yeah, just the way all of these pieces fit together. Like we've talked about it the last couple of years about Şengün and Jabari theoretically fit very well together because the weaknesses of one or sort of the strengths of the other when you look at how they fit together on the front line. Well, I think there's some of those same traits in Reed and Amin. So not only have the Rockets drafted well and they have all these promising young pieces, and now you have Kevin Durant as the straw that sort of stirs the drink, the tip of the spear scorer, but now you have these young players whose games sort of perfectly balance off each other. To me, that just speaks to, obviously it's good foresight in terms of how they've drafted. I don't know if it's all that because Rafael will tell you to go BPA, but whatever reason it has worked out that way. And certainly Ime Udoka is a coach that knows how to make it all work together. And so I know it's only one game. Well, no, Reed and the men did start in the Suns and Warriors games as well. So now it's 3 games of them starting together, and so far so good. I like the way they play off of each other.
Yeah, it's been an interesting discussion as far as Amin being a point guard. I don't think he is a point guard, but in today's NBA, it's more of a primary or engine type of
Yeah.
construct. Can he be that? And I think he
Yes.
can be that. I think he's starting to show that he can be that. There's certainly things that he needs to clean up, but I agree. The combo or the balance between him and Reed out there, where they both can do some of that creation and ball handling. uh, I mean, it's just impressive. I'm amazed. I'm watching Reed. We didn't get to talk about the Golden State game, but the way he played in that game, where he
Yep.
was so confident. This is in at playing at Golden State, a very tough place to play against a very veteran team that knows how to win. And he was so just confident. Uh,
Yep.
the balance between those two, in my opinion, I think you've found your backcourt, and I'm very excited. And
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to mean a little less Şengün is always going to be there as a playmaker for sure. I don't know if that's going to necessarily be your primary, but you've got between the three of those guys a lot of playmaking now on the
Yeah.
floor.
And I thought the biggest thing that we saw in San Francisco was Reed wanted the stage. He wanted the moment. And I think that's so big with a young player. This was for Reed in particular, one of the first spotlight games where he was thrust into a starring role as the starter at point guard facing off against Steph Curry for a Rockets team that was missing 5 rotation players if you count Fred VanVleet. And so he had no choice but to let it fly. He put up 25 shots and he made 12 of them, including 4 threes. And several of them were at high leverage moments in the second half. So the way that he shined on that stage, I agree with you. It means something. And then, the one concern you have when you start Reed, I had seen some people talking about, well, if Reed isn't the sixth man, who is? Who's going to anchor those bench units? And, it's not as cut and dried as saying, well, here's the first unit, here's the second unit, because there is some staggering that goes on. And we hope, 2 or 3 weeks from now, Tari Eason's going to be back. But in the interim, Steven Adams is a machine on the offensive glass. So even if you worry a little bit about how, well, if your primary reserves are Aaron Holiday, Josh Okogie, now to Aaron's credit, he has shot really well the last couple of weeks, but do they have enough firepower off that bench? Well, the thing is, if they're playing minutes with Steven Adams, you're probably going to get, and you're going up against backups largely from the other team, you're going to get so many shot attempts. And Steven, we talked about him earlier, he made 9 of 10 free throws. So one of the big concerns with Steven in previous years, can other teams just hack him? Like when he's attacking the glass
Yeah.
and the Rockets are over the limit, will they just grab him and he's going to make 1 of 2 free throws at most? That's not the case this year. So that is not really an option for other teams. And so when Steven can just crush the offensive glass and teams are reluctant to foul him because he's making free throws now, then even those second units without Reed, you're still going to be okay offensively because you have Steven in that offensive rebounding presence. I mean, we'll see tomorrow. It's night 2 of a back-to-back. But by and large, Steven is sort of I don't want to say an offensive hub, but he's an offensive stimulus when he's out there. And so that might allow you to play Reed with the starters and get away with it.
Yeah, so you highlighted before we close, you talked about the what's coming up. I'm really the next 5 games, the Rockets should win. The Suns probably the toughest one in there. The Clippers are very hard to figure out, but you got tomorrow, second game of a back-to-back in Utah. Rockets will stay in Salt Lake City tonight, play the Jazz again tomorrow night. I can't imagine Keontae George will have the same game, but I still expect the Rockets to win that. Then you come home, play the Kings, stay home to play the Suns. That was supposed to be Jalen Green's return.
It will be Dylan Brooks' return, and there's going to be some fireworks there.
Yeah, no question. Then you go on the road to play the Mavericks. They're maybe a little bit better lately, but still you should win that game. And then you come home to face the Clippers, which should have been a tough game, but the way the Clippers are playing. By the way, side note, I'm absolutely terrified that the Clippers are going to keep playing this way, and that pick is going to go to OKC. And if they get a top 3 pick, I'm just going to lose it. But the next 5 Rockets should win. Knock on wood there, but then you come home, you stay home you go to Denver to play the Nuggets on December 15th. So next 5 look really good. Rockets currently 13-4, should come out of this 18-4, but again, I don't want to claim any wins until it happens. I'm just saying the next 5 look really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to see if they can keep up the defensive intensity, because for me, that's been so rewarding to see over the last week. I mentioned going into today, they were up to number 6 overall in defense. The last 3 games are holding teams on average to below 100 points. I hate that the Jazz technically exceeded 100 points because somebody threw in that garbage 3 basically at the buzzer, and I was like, come on, they're technically at 101. But no, the average of the last 3 still below 100. And if you play with that level of defensive intensity and you have the high-end talent offensively that the Rockets have, you're going to be fine against almost everyone that you play. And against weaker teams, you should be able to just run them out of the gym the way the Rockets did tonight. And so that's been the big question. To start the year, we talked about the identity shifting. They were top 2, number 1 for a stretch offensively, but they were giving a lot back defensively relative to last year when they were top 5. Well, now the defense has come back almost to top 5, and the offense is still top 2. So will that sustain itself as the schedule eases up? That's a big question, because it's easy to sort of take your foot off the gas when you're playing weaker teams. Like everybody, when you're playing Murderer's Row, like it felt like the Rockets were early in the year to bring your best effort. Will the Rockets on night 2 of a back-to-back in Salt Lake City, playing the Kings, playing the Suns, the Mavs, will they have that same level of intensity? If they do, yeah, this team should be just fine. And, one little thing that I'm keeping my eye on, when I did my last Rockets launch pod with Paolo Alves, I talked about, where's the low-hanging fruit? Where can this team improve relative to the start of this season? And, I talked about, KD specifically, the shooting numbers being a little bit down, and today that bounced back in a big way. Paolo made the point, and I think I agree with him. The more I thought about it, it's defensively where this team was leaving some meat on the bone. And so if you split up Reed and Steven and you start Reed, and Steven tries hard, but defensively he's always going to be a little bit limited just because he's not the most fleet of foot. Those minutes with Reed and Steven together, there's a lot of teams like Denver, we saw that in the second half, that can attack you. Well, if you split up Reed and Steven, you raise the overall defensive floor. So as much as we talk about it on the offensive end of the court, what Reed starting would mean, defensively splitting up Reed and Steven, not that either is a full-blown liability, but they have certain deficiencies. They have certain areas that can be targeted. And so if you play them together, then that can make it a little bit worse. But if you start Reed and you bring Steven off the bench, you break them up, you might be raising the overall defensive ceiling of this team. And if the defense continues to play at a near top 5 level the way they have, well, now for the season overall, but certainly the last few weeks, then this stretch of the schedule, this is one where the Rockets can go from, they're 13-4 now. Boy, they could put together a lot of wins in a hurry. That's the bottom line. And Dave, one last shout out I got to get in. the Rockets and Texans need to schedule more games at the same time. We are now 2-0 for both teams in games where they both played on Sunday afternoon. The Milwaukee game was the same time as that insane Davis Mills
Nice.
comeback against the Jags a couple of weeks ago, and now the Texans get the big win in Indy, and the Rockets roll in Utah. So we need more Sunday afternoon matinees where they play at the same time, because somehow it brings out the best in both of them.
Absolutely. That's Ben DuBose. I just say Rockets play again the same team tomorrow night. We'll be back as they got some guys rested in the fourth quarter because it was such a blowout tonight. Should be good for tomorrow, even though Adams will be out. Again, that's Ben DuBose. Thank all of you guys for supporting us and watching us, and we appreciate it. And we will see y'all tomorrow night. Thanks, everybody.